asked the question about, what are you guys getting out of this? What do you think you're getting out of, somewhere? I don't know. I'm finding it, I find the book it's kind of scattered. I don't like the organization of it. So I don't know what they were thinking with that format. I still get confused of one lesson I'm on, and this is for the next week. And so I look at that, but there's some things in here, like just the content. I mean, if you grasp, it's simple, but it's so important that we grasp what he is trying to put across here. And so this session is titled Heart, 3 Ways to Live. He talks about religion, irreligion, and the gospel. And the way he starts it out is he starts in Luke 18, 9 through 14, and he's talking about the Pharisee and the tax gatherer. And so it's a classic story of the Pharisee saying, God, he mentions one time God, and then the rest of it is I. I'm not like him, and I don't do this, and I don't do that. And so it's all this comparison, and the Pharisee's trying to justify what he's like and how good he is, because he tithes, he's a good person, he hasn't murdered anybody, and he's not like that scumbag tax gatherer over there. But the tax gatherer's saying, he can't even raise his head, and he's saying, Lord, a poor person like me, what a wretch I am. And if you go in context, remember I've said some of the fancy words, the hermeneutics and exegesis. And so exegesis is about then and there. What was in context at that time, and we have to understand that, because that helps us to understand why Paul in Corinthians is saying, ladies, you got to wear a hat, and you go, well, how does that fit in doctrine? And stuff? Well, then and there, it had a reason. Likewise, then and there was the fact that tax gatherers were the scum of the earth. They were cheaters. They, misrepresented people. They stole from others, and they just all at their expense. So they were kind of scumbags.
What do you mean that?
That's true. That's true. I still get a little bit of the reluctance in the treasurer to my borough. I'm writing out the check to his name. I always put on there treasurer because I don't like writing it to his name. One of these days, if he's collecting the tax and he decides, hey, I'm going to Switzerland, I'm out of here, I'm going to Mexico Resort, I don't get that. I don't understand how you can write out a check to this guy. All right? So in any event, right, good point, Wes. But not all. I'm sure there's some good Christian tax gatherers nowadays.
We're not like them.
Not yet. That's right. We're not like them. So with that, when we talk about context then and there, Luke wrote that, inspired by the Holy Spirit, we believe, that the Scriptures is divinely inspired. And so if you read the rest of that chapter and into the next chapter, Luke brings up time after time after time of comparison of the gospel and the religious. And so the next example is they're walking along and people are coming up and saying, Jesus, just bless my child, bless my child. And the disciples are, out of here, get out of here. The master's busy. And Jesus saying, you get out of here, bring the children to me. Because they were getting religious, too important to mess with these little kids. They didn't have time to do that. So they're shooing them away. Jesus says, bring them here. And then he chastises the disciples and says, if you don't become like one of these little children, you can't get into the kingdom of heaven. Bam! Right in the forehead. Okay? Get rid of this religious attitude and start thinking what the gospel is. We have a chance to make an impact here in these young children's lives. We need to take that opportunity, especially if people are willing to bring the children to us. Next example is the rich young ruler. We've all heard about the rich young ruler. He comes up, Jesus, I tithe, I'm a good guy, I've helped others, da-da-da-da-da-da, goes on and on and on. And then Jesus says, because all the ruler wanted to do, you know how this is in his face. The ruler just wanted one thing to sum up and say, God, what else can I do? One thing. Give me one thing that I can do to get, into this kingdom. Hey, what else can I do? Jesus said, okay, I'll give you one thing. Sell all you have and give it to the poor and come follow me. Oh, wasn't thinking about that one. I'm not sure I want that one because I have many possessions. And then, so he's religious, very religious guy, very nice, very good to other people. He's a good person. And we're hearing a lot of that nowadays. He's a good person. Or we'll hear of efforts that say, well, they're not Christians, but they're doing good things. Well, it's kind of dangerous because that religion doesn't really tap into Jesus and the real reason. I believe all goodness comes from God, but there are a lot of movements now that go forward and they'll say, well, we're not really tied into a church or anything, but we're doing good things. And that's cool. It is, but it isn't. Unless we're glorifying God, we're trying this self-salvation. If you read in Keller, he labels it as self-salvation. That's what the religious are trying to do. We try to save ourselves and feel good about ourselves by doing good things, but we're really still all about ourselves and not doing it to please God. So in this instance, this rich young ruler is trying to be religious, and so the disciples are sitting around there listening, and they're listening to this and they're going, well, God, who in the world can get to the kingdom of heaven then? How can anybody get there? And Jesus says, it's easier for the camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is to get into the kingdom of heaven. And some interpretations try to switch that around and say, well, you know what, in the ancient times, in the walls of the city, there was this little opening that camels could, crawl through and get in there, and that was the needle, what they called the needle. It might have been. But Jesus, if you haven't looked in here, Jesus uses a lot of hyperbole. That's, radically wild statements to just exhibit a contrast. And that he's trying to contrast. So whether it's this camel trying to crawl through this little hole or he really meant the eye of a needle, the point is taken. It's really hard when we're rich, especially when we think we're rich. All right? That's the issue. It's not about being rich. There's plenty of rich people that will get into the kingdom of heaven. But when we think we're rich, and that doesn't mean rich just with cash or finances. That means we think we're rich in our health. We think we're rich in our relationships. And we start thinking things that really aren't the truth. They're just sort of out there in our perception of things. So he goes to his disciples who are getting religious and trying to get there on their merit. Okay? I'm working my way, and I'm hanging with you, Jesus, so I'm in, right? Just because you're hanging with Jesus doesn't mean you're in. Judas hung with Jesus, and then he hung. All right? So you're not in by just hanging out with Jesus. He doesn't just rub off on us and spill over into us until we open our hearts and let him come in. So Luke continues. All right? He continues, and Peter jumps up and he says, look, Jesus, I've given up everything to follow you. I left my house. My wife's back there yelling at me because I'm with you all the time. She's giving me a house. We left everything and we're following you. What's the deal? Of course we're into you. And Jesus goes, Peter, you're going to get far more than you ever imagined for following me. Don't give me this, you're so holy and religious because you're following me and you gave up a few things in your life. It ain't cutting it. It's not cutting it. No, I'm going to give you far more. Now, you have to be a little bit of visionary and look to the future. So what are we willing to give up, guys, to follow Jesus? To get that future vision of what he's going to actually bless us with. That's the battle here. The battle is this religious thing. So Luke continues in the religious gospel comparison. And they're walking down the road, and Jesus is in the middle of this crowd, and Bartimaeus is screaming out, Jesus, have mercy on me. I need you to heal me. I want my eyesight back. Jesus, have mercy on me. And the disciples are going, just get away, get away. Hey, just get away, get away. Bartimaeus, shut up, shut up. Jesus says, bring Bartimaeus here. Again, religious, because we're too important. Yeah, that's below us to this little peon. Remember, then and there, plenty of blind people, they were irritable people because of the fact they bugged everybody. Now you had to get them around. Who knows if they had seeing eye sticks or dogs or whatever. I doubt it. You know? Didn't have any of that, so they're just a pain. They're just a pain in the butt. And you know, a lot of people take the position that, well, you know what? If they're religious, they would take the position that he must have done something wrong to deserve that, or his parents did something wrong to deserve being blind. Because that question was posed to Jesus in another portion of the Gospels where they said, well, Jesus, what happened to this guy? Did he or his parents do wrong that he's blind? And he says, no, that doesn't line up. We're not getting into detail here, but that has nothing to do with it. But that's a religious perspective. We're saying there's a reason for all these things. We're trying to figure it out logically. You know, guys, we do not think logically. I mean, there's a book out, I'm trying to remember which one it was that I was reading, about how we just repeatedly make decisions that are illogical. So, for example, if we were buying a big screen TV and we could save $100 on that TV, we would definitely drive across town and go and buy that TV across town. But if it came to our car, because the car is $20, $25, maybe $30,000, $100, forget it, I'm not going across town to say that. $100 is $100, right? But we will logic it in our brains to say that, well, I'm not going to go and pay that extra $100 for this TV here. I'll drive across town and get that thing. Yeah. But the car, forget it. It's, $30,000. What's another $100? Doesn't matter. So we think we're thinking logically, but we reason in our minds. We do the same thing with God. We do all these same things where we reason out, well, it doesn't matter in this little circumstance, but in this big situation, or in this little circumstance it matters, but in this big situation it really doesn't matter.